The alert did not sound like an alarm. It never did. Alarms caused panic, and panic caused mistakes. This signal was a low, steady tone that threaded itself through command bridges, strategy chambers, and battlefield relays across the galaxy.
Calm.
Controlled. Unmistakable. 3 words accompanied it on every display, rendered in stark white glyphs. Human units quiet. I was present the first time it activated. At the time, I did not understand why the Council had created an entire emergency protocol for silence. No explosions triggered it. No fleets vanished. No weapons discharged beyond expected parameters. By every measurable metric, the battlefield appeared stable. That was precisely the problem. Humans had gone quiet. The engagement had begun like any other border conflict. A coalition fleet, confident in numerical superiority, pushed into a disputed system near human-controlled space. The humans responded promptly at first. Standard acknowledgements, routine maneuvering chatter, clean command hierarchies transmitted openly on shared channels. Nothing aggressive. Nothing alarming. Many commanders mistook it for hesitation.
Some even laughed.
Then, without warning, human communications dropped to near zero. No tactical updates. No emotional leakage. No redundant confirmations. Just silence, broken only by automated pings confirming life support and power stability. To most species, silence meant confusion or defeat. To those of us who had studied humanity closely, it meant something far worse. The Council's observers leaned forward in unison as the alert activated. Not a single one asked why. They already knew. I remember the way the battlefield feeds looked in that moment. Human ships continued to move, but not frantically. Their formations tightened. Vectors adjusted by fractions, so small they seemed meaningless unless you knew what to look for. Weapon ports closed instead of opening. Heat signatures dropped. It was as if the fleet had taken a single, collective breath and decided to stop announcing its thoughts to the universe. Why are they not communicating? One coalition admiral demanded, his voice sharp with irritation rather than fear. Have we disrupted their command network? No one answered him. Not because they lacked information, but because the truth was unsettling. Humans did not lose communication when under pressure. They discarded it. The Council's records showed a pattern, assembled from conflicts scattered across decades. When humans faced uncertainty, they talked. When they faced danger, they coordinated. But when they faced a situation they had already solved, they went quiet. Speech, to them, was a tool, not a comfort. Once it had served its purpose, it was abandoned. On the tactical display, the first coalition destroyer vanished. There was no dramatic explosion, no energy flare. One moment it was there, the next it was not. Sensors lagged, struggling to reconcile the absence. Then a second ship lost propulsion. Then a third drifted off vector, its guidance systems feeding it perfect data that no longer matched reality. Still, the humans said nothing. The Admiral began issuing rapid-fire commands, flooding channels with orders, demands, threats. His voice filled the void the humans refused to occupy. Each command arrived a fraction too late. Each response assumed an enemy reacting in real time, rather than one that had already mapped every outcome. The Council alert pulsed again. Human units quiet. I watched a human cruiser roll slowly, exposing a hull section that should have been vulnerable. Coalition gunners took the bait. They fired. The cruiser absorbed the strike, not because it was armored beyond expectation, but because the humans had calculated the exact angle, yield, and delay. The return fire came from somewhere else entirely, precise and final. Only then did I understand why silence terrified the galaxy. Humans did not go quiet when they were afraid. They went quiet when there was nothing left to discuss. As the coalition fleet began to collapse into confusion and debris, the council chamber remained utterly still. The alert stayed active until the last hostile signal faded. When human communications finally resumed, they were brief and administrative, requesting recovery corridors and medical exchanges. Polite, efficient, almost gentle. The alert deactivated. No one spoke for a long time.
We all understood now.
When humans were loud, there was still time to negotiate, to react, to survive. When they went quiet, the outcome was already decided. After that first activation, the alert was no longer theoretical. It became doctrine. Every fleet academy, every strategic council, every border command was issued a single amendment to their engagement manuals, stamped with uncommon urgency. If human units fall silent, disengage immediately. There were no exceptions listed. No clarifications. Just a quiet acknowledgement that whatever followed silence was beyond prediction, beyond mitigation, beyond victory. I was assigned to the Council's Behavioral Analysis Division shortly afterward. Our task was simple in description and impossible in execution: determine why human silence correlated so perfectly with catastrophic outcomes for their enemies. We compiled battle logs, sensor recordings, psychological profiles, even cultural artifacts. The pattern persisted with chilling consistency. Noise preceded uncertainty. Silence preceded inevitability. In one archived engagement, a pirate flotilla ambushed a human convoy in a nebula dense enough to distort long-range sensors. At first, the humans argued openly on comms, voices overlapping, emotions audible. The pirates assumed disorganization and pressed the attack. Then, the arguing stopped. Not abruptly, but cleanly, as if someone had flipped a switch. Internal human channels went dark. External channels remained open but unused. 17 seconds later, the pirates lost targeting. 30 seconds after that, 3 ships were disabled by weapons no one could later identify. By the time the pirates attempted retreat, the nebula itself had become a maze only the humans seemed able to navigate. No human voice was recorded until the final pirate vessel surrendered. When questioned later, the human commander explained simply, "We were done planning." That phrase appeared again and again in debriefs. Done planning. As if planning were a finite resource humans exhausted quickly, efficiently, then set aside. Where other species relied on constant feedback, reassurance, and adaptive chatter, humans internalized consensus. Once reached, further communication was redundant. Worse, it was a liability. Our analysts discovered something unsettling. Human silence was not the absence of coordination, but its peak expression. Their neural architectures favored parallel processing. They trained from childhood to act independently toward a shared objective without constant validation. On the battlefield, speech became friction. Noise became exposure. Silence became speed. The Council's fear deepened when we realized the alert was triggering earlier with each conflict. Humans were learning the galaxy's habits faster than the galaxy learned theirs. In later engagements, silence descended almost immediately, sometimes before the first exchange of fire. As if humans could read intent before action, outcome before engagement. One commander I interviewed, a veteran of 3 border wars, struggled to articulate his terror. When they stopped talking, he said, mandibles trembling, "It's like the universe narrows. Options disappear. You field processed." Processed. That word stayed with me. Humans did not overpower their enemies in those moments. They resolved them. Like equations. Like inefficiencies. The Council attempted countermeasures. They tested communication jamming, hoping to force humans back into noise. It failed. Silence persisted. They tried provoking emotional responses, broadcasting threats, even fabricating civilian distress signals. Human fleets acknowledged receipt, then went quiet anyway. The alert triggered every time. Losses followed every time. In one disastrous experiment, a coalition fleet ignored the alert entirely, confident that awareness equaled immunity. They engaged a human task force near a dead star. When the humans fell silent, the coalition held formation, weapons primed, waiting for a decisive moment. It never came. Instead, systems failed one by one, not through attack, but through cascading miscalculations. Gravity wells shifted. Sensor ghosts multiplied. Friendly fire incidents rose. By the time they realized what was happening, the humans had already disengaged, leaving the coalition fleet crippled without firing a final shot. Afterward, the Council added a second line to the alert protocol, one never shown to the public. Human silence indicates completion of intent. I began to understand then why the alert used no alarms. Panic was useless. There was no action to take once it sounded, only consequences to endure. Humans did not go quiet to threaten. They went quiet because threat was inefficient. When they spoke, there was hope. When they argued, there was time. When they fell silent, the galaxy learned humility. And somewhere beyond the next border, a human fleet was already quiet, long before anyone noticed. The first time the alert activated before a shot was fired, the Council understood that silence was no longer a reaction. It was a decision. The incident occurred in the Relix Passage, a narrow corridor of space essential to 3 trade empires and 1 human supply route. Tensions had been escalating for cycles. Patrols shadowed each other. Warnings were issued, retracted, reissued. Human ships arrived last, as they always did, slipping into formation with quiet efficiency. At first, their comms were open, civil, almost friendly. Then a single coalition cruiser adjusted its vector half a degree too aggressively. Human channels went silent. The alert triggered instantly. Human units quiet. No weapons had fired. No shields flared. Yet every strategist in the council chamber felt the same chill crawl through their neural spines. This was new. Silence without provocation. Silence without escalation. Silence as preemption. I watched the feeds with a growing sense of dread. The human fleet did not maneuver dramatically. No flanking rush. No aggressive advance. They simply settled. Their ships spread slightly, forming a loose configuration that made no sense to coalition analysts trained to recognize rigid doctrines. To human eyes, it was elegant, redundant, complete. The coalition commanders debated furiously on open channels, filling the void humans refused to occupy. Orders overlapped. Counterorders followed. Someone suggested waiting. Someone else demanded action before the humans did something. No one could agree on what that something might be. Then the passage itself began to change. Gravitational eddies, previously mapped and considered stable, shifted subtly. Navigation buoys drifted off calibration. Sensor returns doubled, tripled, contradicting each other in impossible ways. The humans had not fired a weapon. They had not deployed mines. They had simply positioned themselves so precisely that the environment became hostile to everyone else. A coalition frigate attempted to advance. Its engines flared, then cut. Not damaged, conflicted. Its systems received perfect data that could not coexist. It drifted helplessly. Another ship tried to compensate and collided with it at a closing speed that should have been avoidable. Panic bloomed. Still, the humans said nothing. At that moment, the council analysts realized the terrifying truth. Human silence meant the engagement had already passed the point of interaction. What was unfolding was not combat. It was execution of a solution calculated earlier, perhaps days earlier, perhaps before the humans ever entered the passage. I remember one of the junior observers whispering, "They're not reacting to us. They're reacting to physics." That was when the third line was quietly added to the classified alert file. Human silence indicates environment-level manipulation. The coalition finally ordered a retreat. The command came too late. Withdrawal vectors intersected with the very gravitational distortions the humans had exploited. Ships scattered. Some escaped. Many did not. The humans never pursued.
They did not need to.
The passage itself enforced the outcome. When human communications resumed, it was to broadcast a single navigational correction, allowing survivors a safe exit corridor. No taunts. No declarations of victory. Just efficiency. The council chamber was silent long after the feeds ended. No one celebrated. No one spoke. The realization had settled too deeply. Humans were not masters of war in the traditional sense. They were masters of inevitability. When they went quiet, they were no longer fighting opponents. They were aligning reality toward a conclusion. I spent cycles reviewing human cultural archives afterward, searching for precedent. I found it not in their wars, but in their history of problem-solving.
Disasters.
Engineering failures. Survival scenarios. Again and again, The same pattern emerged: discussion during uncertainty, debate during risk, silence during execution. One phrase appeared repeatedly in their records, attributed to countless leaders across eras: measure twice, cut once. The galaxy, I realized, had spent millennia shouting while humans measured. When the measuring ended, so did the talking. The Council's final revision to the alert protocol came after Relix. It was short,
stark,
never debated. If humans go quiet, you are no longer part of the decision-making process. Somewhere beyond known space, a human fleet was already calculating, already measuring. And when their voices faded, the galaxy would once again learn the cost of noise. The Council did not sleep after Relix. Sleep implied rest, and rest implied ignorance. Instead, we watched. We cataloged every human engagement where silence preceded outcome. The pattern was no longer deniable. It was expanding. The next incident unfolded on the ground, not in space, on the dust-choked world of Istravel. A multi-species peacekeeping force had been deployed to suppress a regional uprising. Humans were included as auxiliary advisors, their numbers small, their mandate limited. They spoke often at first, shared assessments, asked questions, offered logistical suggestions that were politely ignored. Then the insurgents triggered a cascading ambush. Explosions shattered the forward perimeter. Jamming fields rose like invisible walls. Command units screamed over open channels, voices layered with panic, demands, and conflicting orders. Amid the chaos, someone noticed the humans had stopped responding. The alert fired. Human units quiet. I watched the helmet feeds with a tightening coil of dread. Human soldiers did not shout. They did not scramble. They slowed. Their movements became deliberate, synchronized in a way no shared signal could explain. Each step placed them where chaos could not reach. They began altering the battlefield without firing. Barricades shifted. Power nodes were rerouted. Smoke was vented into corridors insurgents believed secure. Human engineers disabled infrastructure with surgical precision, turning terrain into a maze that punished familiarity and rewarded adaptability. The insurgents fought bravely. It did not matter. They were reacting to opponents. The humans were shaping conditions. One by one, allied units unknowingly fell into safer positions, shepherded by subtle human adjustments. Kill zones dissolved. Ambushes collapsed into confusion. Enemy communications fractured as their own systems fed them perfect but incompatible information. Still, the humans said nothing. Then came the moment that would be studied in every war academy afterward. A human squad entered a collapsed transit tunnel where dozens of insurgents lay in wait. Thermal scans showed them. Acoustic sensors confirmed breathing. No shots were fired. Instead, the humans halted. They waited. Minutes passed. Then hours. The tunnel grew cold. Condensation formed. Dust settled. The insurgents' weapons malfunctioned first, microfractures forming from thermal stress. Their power cells drained faster than predicted. When the humans finally advanced, resistance was symbolic at best. When communication resumed, it was not triumph that filled the channels. It was coordination, calm directives, casualty reports delivered without emotion. The uprising ended within a single planetary rotation. In the aftermath, I requested access to human after-action reports. They were sparse. No dramatization. No celebration. One line repeated across multiple files, written by different officers, in different units. Silence maintains clarity. I finally understood the cultural root. Humans did not associate silence with fear. They associated it with focus. Noise was uncertainty. Noise was waste. Quiet was when thinking ended and doing began. The council convened in emergency session. Arguments erupted. Some demanded sanctions. Others proposed isolation. A few, trembling, suggested preemptive deterrence. All were afraid. I said nothing. Not because I feared speaking, but because I feared misunderstanding. When I finally addressed the chamber, I chose my words carefully. I told them the truth as I now saw it. Humans did not escalate violence. They eliminated inefficiency. They did not seek dominance. They sought resolution. Silence for them was mercy. It meant the debate was over. We reviewed historical archives then, searching backward with new eyes. Every lost battle where humans had been present carried the same quiet gap. Every miraculous survival shared the same absence of chatter. We had mistaken restraint for weakness, discipline for passivity. In truth, humanity's greatest weapon was not aggression, but restraint sharpened to an edge so fine it cut without sound. That realization settled over the chamber like gravity, heavy and inescapable, bending every prior assumption we had ever held about war. The final vote was unanimous. A new doctrine was ratified, sealed, and buried beneath layers of classification. If human forces fall silent during combat, all allied units are to disengage and follow human movement without question. Not because humans demanded it, because the galaxy had learned, too late, that when humans stopped talking, survival depended on listening. And listening in that moment meant obedience. Silence was no longer absence. It was warning itself. The alert was never meant to be tested again. It was classified, restricted, and buried beneath protocols designed to prevent panic. Yet warnings exist for a reason, and the galaxy has a cruel talent for finding them. The transmission came from the edge of mapped space, a system cataloged but never settled. A relic war zone. Dead stars. Ancient wreckage drifting like bones. A joint task force had been sent to investigate anomalous energy signatures, council scientists, automated probes, and one human detachment assigned as security. For the first 3 days, everything was routine. Human chatter filled the logs. Dry humor. Tactical observations. Complaints about radiation levels and rations. I remember feeling an irrational comfort listening to them speak, as if noise itself were proof of control. Then the signal spike occurred. One moment, open channels. The next, nothing. Not jamming. Not interference. Silence, absolute and intentional. The alert activated across council space. Human units quiet. Panic rippled through command nodes. Orders were drafted and retracted in seconds. Fleets prepared to jump, then hesitated. No one wanted to be the one who misunderstood what this meant. I was patched into the human command feed by special authorization. There was no audio, only telemetry. Heart rate steady, movement precise. No spikes of fear, no chemical indicators of distress. Whatever they had found, it was not a surprise. The ancient battlefield awakened around them. Structures older than recorded history began unfolding, impossible geometries sliding into alignment. Energy flowed through channels not meant for modern sensors. Automated defenses stirred, their logic cores recognizing threats that predated our species entirely. The council scientists panicked. Their voices filled the open channels, pleading for guidance, for extraction, for answers. The humans did not respond. Instead, they moved between the machines. I watched as they navigated corridors designed by minds that no longer existed, stepping where nothing marked safe passage, touching surfaces that triggered no alarms. They dismantled mechanisms without tools, applying pressure in exact places, disrupting processes that had endured for eons. One human paused before a colossal construct, its core pulsing like a heart. Sensors screamed warnings of catastrophic activation. The human removed their helmet. That detail chilled me more than anything else. Exposed, vulnerable, they placed a bare hand against the relic. The energy spike stabilized. Across the task force, systems powered down. Weapons went inert. The ancient battlefield fell silent, as if recognizing an authority it could not challenge. Only then did the humans speak. Not to us. To the machines. Their words were not translated. They did not need to be. Tone carried intent.
Calm.
Final. A conversation not between equals, but between caretakers and something dangerous that had overstayed its relevance. When they turned their comms back on, hours later, the human commander issued a single report. Threat contained. Site secured. Do not approach further. The council erupted. Demands for explanation. Requests for data. Questions layered atop questions. The humans provided none. They escorted the scientists back to safety, wordless again, and departed the system. Before jumping, the commander added one final line to the log, marked eyes only for council leadership. Some things are quieter when left alone. I understood then what the alert truly meant. It was not just a battlefield protocol. It was a boundary. When humans went quiet, it was because they had crossed into spaces where explanation was unnecessary, where negotiation had already occurred on levels we could not perceive. Silence was not the prelude to violence. It was the sound of responsibility being taken. The council debated dissolving the alert after that incident. Some argued it granted humans too much autonomy. Others feared what might happen if we ignored it. In the end, no vote was held. No one wanted to test what came after silence again. And yet, as I review the most recent classified feed, my appendages tremble. Another system. Another joint mission. Human chatter, steady and relaxed. Then nothing. The alert has just activated. And this time, the silence feels different.
Deeper.
As if the galaxy itself is holding its breath.